All right, so let's go ahead. So what you have to do, okay, so this is for setting up your virtual machine, the CVM in particular. I'll go over basically like common errors that you might encounter, things like that. So let's go to Brightspace here. So 372, you guys are seeing that. And under the materials, so it would be under resources here, right? If you look at it. Right, so you've got several things. We're using VirtualBox for this, and you're downloading the CVM. Okay, so this installation should work, in particular if you have never had a CVM. Okay, so then it pretty much should work fine. If you've had a CVM, you might encounter some errors, and that's because they have a tendency to have like the same ID. You know, so you have to do a step to change that ID, okay? So we can go over here. I added in the course website some common, like a fact, some common errors. So there's some common errors that you might encounter in your installation process. One of them is, you know, something is grayed out. So it says like enable nested VTX AMD V issue. So you might see that and it's grayed out and you're not able to, in your, you know, in the instructions, it says to check it. So the issue is, as you can see here, this feature is available on host systems that use AMD CPUs. For Intel CPUs, which is probably what most of you have on your laptops, I would assume this option is going to be grayed out. So that's pretty much all it is. It shouldn't be a major problem. Any questions on that one? All right, another common issue that you might encounter is you can't find the NAT network. Okay, so if you have that option where you can't find the NAT network, it means you have to create it. So I added this link, which should show you how to set it up. Okay, so you can go over there to network, and then you can create the NAT network. Did anyone have that issue? You had it? And did you solve it?
No.
Okay, but you have to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, great. So these are just common issues that students, as I said, encounter over the years. So I want to stress them out. The other common error that students get is the UUID error setting. Okay, so for this, I prepared this little like instruction set. So what happens there, so the UUID is a universally unique identifier, and it's a string of characters used to identify a specific virtual disk. So the UUID of a virtual disk can be changed for various reasons, such as to avoid duplication. So this is the common issue when you had a CVM before in the past. Maybe you didn't even know that you had it, right? But VirtualBox remembers. And so it's going to give you an error. Okay, so you want to have that. And so basically, it's sort of straightforward to fix. If you have a Windows system, what you have to do is this assumes you've already downloaded that VDI file, right? So you downloaded it in your system, you have it somewhere in your downloads possibly. So what you have to do is, and VirtualBox is already installed, right? So when you install VirtualBox, it installs this feature to change the UUID, okay? So what you need to do is here you CD into your Windows, for instance, in Program Files, Oracle VirtualBox. Once you're in there, you will be able to find this program, vboxmanage.exe. Okay, so basically then what you do is you literally just run this command. Okay, keep in mind you're going to be in the VirtualBox folder, but you're going to give it the full path to your VDI wherever you downloaded it, such as in the downloads. Does that make sense? And you just run this and it'll automatically change the ID to something else. So at this point, if you had an old CVM and you do this, once you create this one, now you have two VMs which have different IDs, so there won't be a clashing issue and you should not get that UUID error. Any questions? Did anyone encounter this? And it may just be that you guys only had one VM, so. But for a student that may have had both, this would be the issue. All right, obviously, most of you, I think, are installing on Windows, but if you're installing on Linux, then it would be this command over here. Okay, got it? And so all of you have your VM working, right? So all of you have it. No one's stuck or anything like that. Okay, perfect. All right, so that's I expected more. This usually takes like a while. All right, so that's great. Great job. All right, so now that you guys have done that, then we're going to go ahead and we've addressed all the issues. These are, I mean, I haven't, maybe some of you have had issues with external hard drives. That's the only other issue I've encountered, but otherwise, I don't remember any other problems setting up the VM. So I wanted to address these, and basically the documentation, you have all the links so you can read through it at your own leisure. All right, so the next thing we're going to do then now is we're going to go over the assignment. So that means I'm going to boot up the virtual machine, and we're just going to go through some of the commands. I'll walk you through. You can follow along. But this is an easy assignment, right? So this is your very first assignment. And really, it couldn't be easier. You just have to type commands and see what they do, etc. And I'll kind of explain along, but I'll let you guys finish up like, the last half of them. Okay. All right. So that's really all I have planned for today. All right. So this is the discussion on this. So I can probably close this. I also added the resources. I think all the resources are now posted on the website. I also updated the calendar. So I will be updating there. So you can see the website has the calendar. The GitHub is where all the code is. YouTube is where I'll post the videos and everything like that. Okay. So let's go ahead and click on table of contents. So that's the resources. Now we can go into intro. Next week, we will start, I will do a review of scripting with Python. You guys have all taken 140 probably, and you've taken other courses, so you're pretty good at that. And I'm just going to do a quick review of some of the basic ideas, how to import some of the libraries, and we'll go from there. Okay. And then you will have a more challenging assignment, with cases and things like that. So we'll go over some cases. But today, I just want to make sure everyone is comfortable and on the same page. So really what we have for today is basically going through this lab, okay? As you can see, I'm going to click on this one. And basically we're just gonna, I'll demo all these things. And then at the end of the day, you guys can go ahead and just complete them. All right, so we're gonna need for this the virtual machine. So I'm going to start VirtualBox. Okay, and then as you can see, I have two VMs. I just created this one today. I'll use my old one because I have a lot of files in there. Now, there will be some labs in the future where we will need two VMs, possibly. The DNS one, for instance, where we have one client who needs a server, that kind of thing. So this procedure that I just showed you could be one for you to create two VMs. You see what I'm saying? And so on. You can follow that procedure, or there's an option in VirtualBox to create clones, and that will also automatically do things for you. But so it's up to you guys, really, how you want to do it. You play with this stuff. The whole point of this is, to have fun and to, to learn. All right, so I'm just gonna click on this one, and I'm gonna click start. I'm gonna open Brightspace over here so I can reference my own lab instructions. All right, so wait for the VM. So while it's booting up, I guess I'll create the link for the homework assignment so you guys can see how that works, how I do this procedure. So I'm going to go into the intro section. Okay, I usually just create the links in the module itself, and I dump all the files there, okay? So I don't like to create separate modules for homework because then this becomes too long and, too many things. So this is intro, basically. This is week 1. I usually just have the instructions here, for instance. So from the attached Word document, complete bullets 1 through 26. Submit a report with screenshots for each problem and answer the questions. Is that clear enough for you guys? So you need to include screenshots that show evidence that you completed the work, okay? And like I said, this is a very simple one where you just follow the steps. I've already started a little bit with like 2 or 3 of these commands. Today, I'm going to show you more of the commands. So I just copied that. Basically, it's the attached Word document. So now I'm going to create the assignment. So I'm just going to do new assignment. And this will start showing in your grade book now. So I usually just say homework. And this is going to be intro Linux. Okay. So this is, remember, it's 100 out of 100 points. So the way that I do these due dates, I usually give you 1 week, okay? Or a little more than a week, actually, like 10 days. And I have this thing called a soft deadline and the hard deadline. Soft deadline just marks your homework as being late, but don't worry about that. As long as it's still open, you're fine. So really, the hard deadline is the important thing, okay? But it's just to kind of help you to stay on top of it. So for instance, this assignment is today. So the soft deadline is the 18th, right? Next Thursday by 10 p.m. Okay. I'm going to throw, the description here. So from the attach, it's the same as it's already in a file there. So from the attached Word document, complete bullets 1 through 26, submit a report. I don't need to say a PDF or Word, right? I mean, you understand it's a report with screenshots for each problem and answer the questions. Any confusion or doubts as to what you need to submit? And I'll give you a little bit of I'll look at your first homework, and if it's not right, I can give you a chance. But I do in general want you to, address the issues. At the end of the day, it's about showing that things work, because sometimes, Linux commands are difficult to craft, right? So you have to not only craft it but show me that it did work, that you produce some output. All right, so that's basically it. Then here is where I do. So the start date is just so that it's open now. And then the end date, I usually give you until Saturday. And that's some of you work and things like that. So you have that extra little bit. So as long as you get the homework by this date, the end date, right, you're good. So you really have until Saturday. Is this clear enough? Yes, please.
The end date is for this Saturday this week. Is that right?
Oh, is that what I did? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. No, I'm sorry. You're right. Yeah. Winter break, right? So all right, yeah. So it's the Saturday after the soft deadline. Yep. And so you have there. So just make sure. My suggestion is always try to get your homework in by the 18th. Okay. And then that way, if you may not be able to finish it, but then you have a couple more days, which is a good thing. And also, that's actually the day when we meet again. So you should ask questions during that lab assignment. I usually try to give a few minutes or some time for you to ask questions if you need help with something. Got it? I don't imagine you'll need help with this assignment, but other ones will get more challenging really quickly. Like by week 3, things will get more challenging for sure. All right, so that's basically it. So the assignment is now posted. Okay, so you can see now this would appear in your grade book. Right, so that would appear in your grade book. And you can see the link is there, all the information. You click on it, and the information is right there. Okay. And it's usually the Word doc is the thing that you have to complete. All right, so we're going to open up that Word document. So I'm opening it here on this other computer. And now what I plan to do is just to go over the instructions, basically. I'll read them out from here, and then I'll just go over these on the virtual machine that everyone has. Okay. All right. So I think so this is already fine. Let's go to the virtual machine then. It should be open now. Yep. So I'm going to click on these. All right. So the homework is assigned. That's your first homework assignment. Okay. Okay. All right. So I am going to create a new folder, although we don't need that for today. I recommend that you do that the same, ITS 372 maybe, and this is spring 2024. I should have done this through the command line. So, but sometimes you can do things via the GUI, and that's what I did. All right, so let's open up the terminal. Okay. And you guys can see over here, right, we have the terminal. So now remember, we already covered navigating through the file system. We covered that in some detail. So I'm just going to navigate to the desktop. Oh, there it is. And I'm going to, I created ITS 372 Spring 2024. Go in there, CD ITS 372 Spring 2024. Okay. So I created that folder. Okay. I should have done mkdir, so basically navigating mkdir, and then the folder name, something. That's what I should have done. We'll do this some other time. Okay, but that's the Linux way, the terminal way. All right, so now we're going to look at our document, the Word doc, and it basically is just a basic introduction. So we've logged into the VM. You've checked that you have internet access. So we've opened the terminal, and now we're going to look at commands. So the first command that we can look at is sudo. Okay, so the sudo command, as I explained before, is basically so that an account can get the administrator privilege. Okay, so who are we? Well, you can actually ask the operating system, who am I? And it's going to tell you who you are. You should know who you are, but because you know what login you use, right? But you can use the command who am I, and it gives you basically that you are C. You can also do ID, and it gives you the information. So here you have that your UID for the CVM is 1,000. So there's actually all these accounts, right, already in your system from 0 to the range from 0 to 1,000, or from 0 to 99,999 are basically for system accounts. So applications, the very first account, the account 0, is, as you might imagine, for the root user. But remember, it does exist, it's just disabled by default. Okay, and then seed is the first one of the accounts of users. So if you create an account, a new one, let's say J Smith, then that would become like 1001, 1002, and so on. Okay, but basically for now, we're just trying to, identify who we are. Okay, so sudo basically means that you can install things, you can modify files. So for instance, one example of this would be to go to the etc folders and etc folder, which we looked at the file system on Tuesday, right? So then I know for a fact that there should be a file in here called or let's do cat. So cat just allows us to look at something. So there should be a file in here called hosts, and you can see that I've opened to view that file. Okay. Now, if I want to modify it, our next command after sudo is nano. So I'm going to do Control X. Oh, yeah, actually, I'm going to do clear here. All right. So if I want to see the files in here, I can do ls-l. The problem is that there's a lot of files in here. Okay. So there's a lot of files. But I know that there's a host file, which is the one I want to look at. So I'm going to do clear nano hosts. All right, so nano is for actually modifying things. So you can see in bullet number 5, it says, what is nano? So nano is an editor that lets you on the terminal open files, modify them. It's user-friendly. I mean, it's not like Word per se, but it's still much more user-friendly than VI or something like that. Okay, if you look over here, I have several files. So let's say that I want to go ahead and change this file, and I'm going to just put a comment. So this is just a comment. Okay. You notice I added that information. Now I'm to close nano, you can see the instructions right here. This means Control X to exit. And then it's going to ask you if you want to save if you made a change to the file. So here I'm going to do Control X. Then it says yes or no, save, and it says why. And then the name is already given, so don't change it. And you can see permission denied, right? I was restricted from accessing this file. Why? Because when this is an important system file in etc for configuration, so it requires the root privilege, okay? Since I'm only using the seed account as a regular user, I don't have access to do this. So now you weren't able to basically save your information. So just say no. Now, how do we bypass this? Well, basically, you need to do sudo nano. Okay, so what that means is that when you do sudo nano, now you're saying, I'm going to edit the file, but by the way, I am in the sudoers group, so I need you to escalate my privileges to be an administrator, right? So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put in comment 1. Okay, Control X, Y, enter. And as you can see, the file has been saved this time. So now if I go back in there, you can see that my comment is in there. Does that make sense? So that's what sudo is for. Don't overuse sudo. Students have a tendency to just, I'm going to sudo everything, right? And it's not necessary. And you can actually insert problems in there because sometimes you're using sudo and it's going to start saving certain files as root owned, and you're actually going to be restricting yourself when you're not using sudo. You will not be able to access them. So be careful with your use of sudo. Okay, it's not a thing that you should always use. In fact, you should use it only when it's required. All right, so let's get rid of this comment actually, because we really don't need it. All right, so I got rid of it. I hit Control X, Y, enter. That's it. All right, so I finished the file and we've gone over bullets 4 and 5, right? So you should now have a sense of what sudo is. I encourage you to do a little search of it. With all these things, you can Google them and, go on Wikipedia or something, find out sudo, get a little bit more of the background. We will come back to this a bit more later. This is relevant to something called setuid and various intricate things in Linux. So we'll also look at the sudoers, etc. Okay. Yes, please.
So when we're documenting on the
Yeah.
sheet that you provided us, like for the sudo one, what screenshot should we use? Is that like using the command or?
Yeah, using the command. So just something, that's a good question. So if you do like sudo nano host, right, it opened the file and then just say, well, I did Control X and I don't get permission denied or something, I was able to save it. Sometimes you kind of have to just like speak of the steps that you did, even though you don't really have evidence for it, but just kind of document a little bit. Be brief though.
Yeah.
1 to 2 sentences, no more than 3 screenshots.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. So in general, I know sometimes I just read your sentences and I know you understood, but I'd like to see some screenshot that you did some work.
Maybe.
Yeah. I get it's hard. So it's to know how many but I can't say I need 64 screenshots. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. Sometimes just one, you can have 64 and they're all wrong. And one student had that one screenshot that because they understood exactly what they were doing. So they understand then what they need to show. So it's kind of like that. All right. So yeah. So we did bullets 4 and 5, right? So as I said, this is pretty easy because today is just the common commands. Later on, it's going to be more, more challenging things for sure. All right. So the next question is how to install things on Linux. Okay, so here we are going to look at apt-get or apt install Emacs. I probably installed this many times. So cannot open lock file, permission denied, unable to acquire our uroot, right? So then sudo apt-get, and then you get something like that. Does this make sense, guys? So installing programs in general may be something that requires sudo privileges. Obviously, if I had it, it gives me this. For you guys, it might give you something else like, do you wish to install? And then you have to hit yes usually, and then it installs things. If you get an error when you're using apt or apt-get, pay attention to this. There's a nice little trick. Sometimes what happens here is that you have these files somewhere in the file system that tell apt-get what repositories it should use. So basically what it's doing is apt-get is going to some file that has some Ubuntu approved repositories, and then it goes there and downloads software. So it's not, the Linux system here is not downloading just any software off the internet, right? And it's only downloading like approved software by Ubuntu. All right, so it needs to go to these repositories which get updated. However, sometimes they are like out of sync or not updated, right? So what you can do if you're getting errors sometimes that fixes the issue is to do sudo apt-get update, okay? So it's a recommended thing that you do this update because then it's able to find the things that you want. So you can see there, it's actually updating for me right now, since I haven't used this in a couple of weeks. And it's just updating the various tools. All right, so it finished. So now, I'll repeat the command. I know it's not in the document, but it's one of those that you should keep track of. I always recommend the students create a GitHub account and, think of it as your cheat sheet, put important commands there that you're going to be reusing so you can always just fetch them easily instead of always having to Google stuff. All right. So that's basically the command. So you do sudo apt-get update, and then you can install some program of your choice, whatever it is. Any questions on this? All right, so we're using the CVM, which does have software, but every now and then we'll need to install a package here and there, right? And this is part of it. And so that's going to be the process. All right, so that's basically bullet number 6. Bullet number 7 is the ls command. So we've talked about that one quite a bit. It's just about listing where you are. As you can see, I'm in etc right now. I should probably get out of this folder because I am an administrator. If I do sudo and start creating files in here, I shouldn't be doing this. This is a very important folder, right, where you have configuration for everything. So kind of get out of it and just go to your desktop probably. So you can see here, I'm at root now. Okay. So then I'm going to go into cd home, ls, cd seed, clear, ls-l, cd desktop, clear, ls-l. And now I'm going to go into the what I created for today. ITS 372 Spring. And I hit clear, ls-l. Right. So we're back here. We haven't created any files, but I think we'll do a Python hello world example type of thing. So we'll create a file in a second. All right. So bullet 8 is basically talking about CD, which you know it means change directory. I already talked about this on Tuesday, right? And we'll be using this quite a bit, going into folders, going out of folders, etc. So you should definitely show, although I'm not demoing it here because I did that on Tuesday, you should definitely show utilization. These are, as I said, I would call these like the most common commands. There's a few things I will leave for you guys to play with, so I'll skip some of those. Clear, we've used a lot. All right, so bullet number 10 is date, okay? So that's a problem for you to solve for your homework. All right, but hopefully you're reading the Brightspace Word document. Basically, bullet 8 says set date and time. So what you need to do there, I provided the instructions. There's basically like an encoding that you need to follow so that you can set the date and time for the system, okay? So that I will leave for you guys, but the example utilization is there. So basically it says you're probably going to need sudo because you're messing with the system time and date. The command is date, and then you need to provide a new date time string. So I can, I guess, show you this. So this problem you can play, have fun with. So click on this. All right, so here. All right, so the syntax basically by the way, whenever you see me write these two greater than symbols, I mean the command line, okay? That's what I always mean. The thing is, your command line, you might say, why don't you use what I see in the command line, which is what? A $sign, right? That's probably what you guys are seeing. The thing is that $sign actually changes sometimes. It becomes like a hash value or something like that, a £. And so there's meaning in that, that the £sign means that you have the root privilege. The $sign means that you're a regular user. So this is actually very important for certain problems, right? Where you need to understand if you need to be root or not root. And so usually, because it may be part of the problem, I use the two greater than symbols so I don't tell you which one it is, and you kind of have to understand. Does that make sense? So just keep that in mind. All right, so in this example, it says sudo date name new date time string. And then here where new date time string has to follow a specific format. So you can read through this or you can go online and look for examples. That's perfectly fine. But you'll have to set the date and time. That's a problem I'm leaving for you guys to do. Okay, and play with. All right, the next bullet is bullet 11. Let's talk about that one. So I'll go back to the virtual machine. Okay, so df-h and just df in general first gives you information about the hard drive and utilization of your how much you have available. So you can see here your drive, it's in the dev SDA5, and it says you have this much, and then you've used up and you have available this much, and it gives you a percentage. So this is something that you can also do if you guys have Macs, for instance. Anybody that has a Mac, it's the same command, and it's a way for you to see how much available space you have on your hard drive. Okay, so all these commands, by the way, eventually will appear in problems. Okay, so a lot of these commands you'll see in specific problems that we will do later in the semester, where you'll have to use them again. So you can see that here is the same. This just gives you a nice df-h gives you better formatted appearance or presentation. So as you probably have started to see already, you get commands, but the commands can sometimes take flags, right? And these flags allow you to have more functionality. So this is telling you you know, size is 78 gigs, 26 used, 48 gigs available. Utilization is about 36% and so on. Okay. Any questions? So that's the screenshot to show basically. So some screenshots are obvious. Okay, all right. Other commands are uname. So uname is basically to look at the system information. So I'm going to do clear here. I'm going to do uname -a. Right, and then basically it tells you the name of the system. So it's Linux VM and all that. Okay, so it's information about the system. You can download files. So for instance, we can try it. Now this is important here. We need to be in a folder. So because you don't want to have random files in your system. So we are in our desktop. We are in the ITS 372 Spring 2024. Okay, great. So we can download a file here. So Linux has this very convenient wget. So I want to download things like I'm going to download pnw.edu. Okay, we don't have a file in here yet. Now I did that. Okay, so it says that index.html, and it downloaded really quickly. So now we can go in, and you can see that your file is right there. When you download a file, things to look at always are the permissions. So who owns this file? Seed, which is you. And you have read and write permissions. Now, this is not an executable file, but if it was an executable file, you would want to have X parameter here to indicate that it's executable. You can look at the file. So you can do, this is PNW's HTML file. It's called index. So you can look at it and basically has PNW information and links and things. Got it? All right. So that's, yeah, another command, wget. Now do clear here. I think I used cat. Cat is actually the next command, 14. And you can see that there is what I use. This one is not an editor, so you're not modifying the file, but you can view it. Now, you can do a lot of interesting things with cat, like you can concatenate files and create a new file. All right, so it's actually very powerful, much more powerful than just viewing the data. Okay. Okay, any questions so far? All right, if you want to look at system uptime, which is basically how long the system has been up and running. So this is a common command if you're tracking, like if you're managing a data center or something like that, you have a lot of machines that are running, you want to have that information as to how long they've been up and running, did they go down, etc. So this is a command that you will use later on, but basically, oops, sorry. We can do uptime here, right? And it just tells you how long we've been running, about 28 minutes, and so on. Okay, so it's information about the system. So, the aspect of it, of managing a Linux operating system, things like that, has to do with also monitoring it. So it's not just like modifying, updating it, or configuring it, but also there's this idea of how do we monitor the system and actually getting statistics of the system itself. What is the downtime? What is the uptime? And so we can use commands like these. And that's one of the things that we will learn. At some point, you will have a system information gathering script, right? So that'll be one of your homework problems probably, where at some point where you have to write a script that would run, in a schedule basis, Tuesdays at 2 a.m. and it would just gather information about all the systems. Does that make sense? So obviously right now I'm typing all these commands on the terminal, but our goal is actually to automate all of this. Okay, so that it basically runs on scripts, and not just scripts that you run, but scripts that run automatically. Okay, and so we're going to look at a facility called cron, or cron jobs, which is the scheduling master or program for Linux, but that's a little bit later. All right, so that's the uptime. And then if I skip a command, you guys can do the research on it. So I'm going to skip the commands. in 16. So I'll let that for you to do. So again, you have to run what, you know, and say what it is. Okay. So Google will try to figure out what it is. Okay. Now, 18 students always get confused as to what I mean with 18. And what I mean is go to the network. So basically, look at, you know, the addresses, etc. So you would go over here and go into either settings or wired connected and go into settings here, right? And then just explore like wired here. So you can click on that, and then you can go to IPv4. That's really what I mean there. So it's basically have that screenshot for bullet number 18. The point is that this is an important thing where I recommend when you're dealing with the network interfaces in Linux itself, the GUI interface is a little bit easier than doing it through command line. Through command line, it might be more challenging and you might get it wrong. So it's one place where I do recommend to use the GUI. Does that make sense? Okay. Although you can, if you want to do it and just learn the right way how to do it, it can be a series of commands sometimes. So it's not just going to be one fix. So this is a good place to use the GUI for sure. All right, DNS, let's take a look. DNS, we'll have one module just on DNS, and you'll have some problems there related to how DNS works. DNS is one of the services. It's called bind in Linux. So we'll explore that, explore a little bit of the security there. So we'll come back to that one. But for now, it's the domain name resolution, domain name service. So we can, this is a service, right? So we want to look at the files that kind of govern DNS for Linux. So those, because they are configuration files, they would be in the etc folder. All right, so we can go ahead and just do nano here. etc, so we're going back to etc, remember? Now, the host file also has to do with DNS, okay? But it only has to do with local DNS. This other file has to do more with like the network DNS. So I'm going to do resolve.com. Right, and here you can see we've got some servers. This is information that there's this file and another file, but this is information that is done automatically by Linux. Okay, when your computer connects to the network, it gets these DNS servers, right? And there's more than one file associated with this. It's not something that you should mess with unless you know what you're doing. So we will do a lab where I'll give some instructions on how to modify these. And in particular, the point will be that you're going to create your own DNS server, and then you're going to have another VM that will use that DNS server for domain name resolution, okay? So just keep that in mind. But for now, I'm just showing this as an example of a file that has to do with configuration that will be relevant later on. So that's really all the screenshot that you need. Just make a comment. Any questions? Nope. All right, good. Dig is another one. I'll let you guys explore what dig is. I can tell you right now, it can be useful for DNS also, for looking up things, but you know, you guys do that as part of your homework assignment. All right, let's cover the next one, bullet number 21. That is ifconfig. So I'm going to do clear. Okay. So ifconfig. This is a nice one, nice command. So you guys will have network security courses. I don't know if you're in them already or you will in the future. And when you're dealing with Linux machines and you're dealing with networking things of adding something to a network, you know, dealing with all that, this is going to be something you're going to use all the time. Okay, if config, you want to know what your IP is basically. Now notice this machine, CVM, already has Docker installed. Docker is one of the topics that we'll cover later in the semester. It's a type of virtualization that's also really powerful, has to do with containerizing things, right? So we'll be able to deploy Linux within this. So it's like, this is Linux, and we're going to have another Linux in there, but they have a much smaller footprint, all right? And it's a very powerful thing. Okay, so Docker, whenever we do that, we'll bring up Docker, the Docker containers, as they're called. We'll get IP addresses for those VMs and so on. And so those IP addresses would appear here, whatever they are. And then for this machine, ENP0S3 should be the actual IP address of this machine. Okay, so that's basically the IP address. You have 3. So it's not this one. This is the Docker IP, and then this would be the actual IP of your machine. Okay? Does that make sense? So you can ping things also. So you guys know how to ping things. So we can ping ourselves. So 10.0.2.4, right? And basically that's your standard ping that you've seen before. You know, it's just like in Windows, you can do this, and you guys probably did this in 170 already. All right, so these are just the features that have to do with the network in Linux, ping, and ifconfig. Okay, any questions? Nope, all right, pretty easy. So that's all you have to show with that. All right, so I do have a bullet, I guess, bullet number 2 on creating directories. So I guess let's do that. So ls-l, we are in here. So I'm going to do mkdir, and I'm going to call it temp homework 1. So I'll remember to delete this later on. And so I create the folder. So now if I do ls-l, you can see that the folder actually does exist. And then so let's navigate into it, and I'm going to say temp homework 1. And now in here, there's nothing, of course. If I do pwd, it shows me that I'm inside this folder. Now let's go ahead and create a file, call it example1.txt, and just say hello. You know, you put in a file in there. All right, great. So I'm done. ls-l. All right, so now I've created a file inside this folder. You can see it's in there. Now let's reverse the process and delete these things, right? Let's get rid of them. So I'm going to get rid of the directory. So I'm going to go in cd ... do clear, do ls-l. All right, so I want to get rid of this folder. All right, let's get rid of the file first. We don't need it, right? So I'm going to do rm, remove. Now here, when you're deleting something, access control is like activated, right? This is the whole point of Linux. So you shouldn't delete important files, right? Now we should be able to delete this file because we are the owner of it and we have the right privilege, right? So that's really important. So I'm going to go ahead and try to remove index. Okay, I did that. Didn't complain or anything like that. And you can see it is gone. So that's really great. Now let's go ahead and remove the folder. So I'm going to do rm temp. See that? I just tab whenever I want to autocomplete. Okay. And I'm going to try to repeat the same process. And it doesn't let me do it. The reason why it's not letting me do it is it's got a file in there, right? So if you're very sure that you want to remove the whole thing, then what you can try to do is do the following. Oops, sorry. What did I do? You can do -r. Okay, so now let's try it. And it does work. All right, so the R, so let's confirm. It's gone, right? The R means recursive. And so what it's doing is if you want to really delete something in the directory, if it has files in it and you're 100% sure, you have to do that -r just to tell it to do it like recursively, and it'll get rid of the whole thing. And of course, you have to have permissions to do that. So you have to be the owner or be root and have the right privilege. Does that make sense? Any questions? All right, yeah, so that's kind of the example of what you need to do. All right, so that's basically the MKDir. Now, if you look at bullet number 23, I'm going to introduce our main scripting language will be Python. So we'll do a lot of examples of Python in this course. So I'm going to go ahead and hit clear. Yeah, all right. And so I'm going to do Python here. I'm going to introduce basically what it is. So I am using, I already have Anaconda set up on this. So I basically just have to type Python. If you guys, I haven't shown you guys how to set up Anaconda yet. So we'll do that in the next week or two. But basically you'll probably have to write Python 3 for now. Okay. That's the only difference, right? So go ahead and do that, and you should get something that looks like this. Do you get this? Yeah, all right, great. So Python has several ways in which you can interact with it. You probably have seen Jupyter Notebooks already. You probably have seen running scripts, which is probably what we will be doing for the most part. This is what is, if you notice, this has 3 greater than symbols. This is the Python interpreter. So what that means, it's like a Linux command, but it's a Python command. All right, so it's kind of nice. Like if you want to do things like I want to say A equals 7, right? And then I'm going to say B equal 3. And then I want to say A plus B equal 10. You see that? So I can do little operations like that. I mean, you could code whatever you want on this, but I don't recommend that you do doing that, right? Instead, create a script or something, because this is not persistent, first of all, right? So you're just, but it's like a nice little interface of things that you can do. All right, so important things to notice, the version of Python is always extremely important. So we are using Python 3.9 here, okay? So be aware of that. Don't use Python 2 or something. If you encounter examples of Python, always check if it's Python 2. That's like deprecated now. So you should be doing Python 3.7 or greater, okay? Another thing, fun fact, is that Python is actually C, right? So I don't know if you guys knew this, but you guys have to take a C++ course. I recommend that you pay a lot of attention to that. You know, C++ is one of the oldest languages that is still like super relevant today. Really important language. It's like 50 years old or something, and it's still the same as, you know, almost the same as it was back then, and it's the best, honestly. Yeah, go ahead.
Would be the plan to update Python
What do you have?
3.8.5.
3.8.5. So I will show, okay, so this is a very good question. We can always update Python, but my recommendation is going to be that you create environments that are specific, that have specific Python versions. So that's why we're going to look at something called Anaconda, which will allow us to create an environment with Python 3.7 and another one with 3.9. The problem with updating something for the whole system is that Python has a lot of libraries, and some libraries work with 3.7, others with 3.8. And if you do that, you're going to write some code that works, and then when you do an update, it'll break. You see what I'm saying? So that's why we're going to instead use the environments to manage. It's like a version control system. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, for now we have this, like I said, we'll look at that later. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So GCC, you can see there, it's telling you what GCC compiler is available. Sometimes a lot of things in the background that you're running on Python, the libraries are actually compiled in C++, and so they run really efficiently. Okay. But Python is really great, and it can be fast as well when it's got powerful libraries. So let's go ahead and exit out of here. Okay, that's clear. So now we're going to go ahead and create. So example number 25 is basically to create a hello world, example of using Python. So For this, I do recommend, we will be writing some scripts in this course. So make sure you know where you are always so you don't lose them. So remember, this is how you can tell. I recommend you put all your files on the desktop, just create the folder. So now let's go ahead. Now you can use Nano. This is usually what I do. The scripts that we write are pretty short, okay? So it's never going to be that complex, and it's mostly about the libraries. We're going to have some libraries for various tasks, okay? So here I'm going to just call this one Hello World. Hello World.py. I like to add that extension there, so then you can hit, and we're just going to say, I'm going to show you the basic structure. So you usually use something called the import command, right? And this just allows you to introduce the library. So some libraries are available by default in Python, something like OS, for instance, which is very relevant for this class because OS can help you to get information about the OS, which is the operating system. And it'll be a way of running some commands. We will also learn about something called subprocess, which will basically is a function that allows you to run the terminal commands from Python. So it helps us to automate. So we will look at that as well. All right, so here then, I mean, Python does not require any, as you probably saw in 140, right? Doesn't require curly brackets or anything like that, a main loop like in C, but it does require good indentation. Okay, so we will see some examples of that next week, not this week. But for now, I just want to do print hello world. Okay, so now you can go ahead and hit Control X, Y, Enter. So that should be saved now. I'm going to do ls-l. There it is. Okay, so now if I want to run it for you guys, you probably need to type Python 3. Since I have Anaconda here, I just type Python, and then I'm going to do hello world. Okay, and there it is. Okay, that's running the script through the Python program. Everyone with me? You all got it to work, right? All right, now if we look at this file, we can see the permissions here. Okay, now we're going to look at something called chmod. So this is an actual Linux command that's really important. We want to be able to run this script without Python here. So it's almost like we want to make it an executable, like in the equivalent of like in Windows when you have .exe and you double click and the program runs, right? So that in Python can be accomplished by doing this chmod on a script, right, to make it executable. So our goal would be to make this into an X. We're going to change that like state of the file to make it executable, okay? But there's a couple of things that we have to do for a script to work like that. So let's clear it out. So let's follow bullet number 26, right? So basically it says do ls-l. So we have the file. We want to run it as an executable. So the way that I would do that is to type ./hello world. Hello world.py. Do you see that? I want to do that, which means I want to run it without the interpreter, without the Python command, and just have it executable. But there's a couple of things going on there. Oh yeah, go ahead.
You just put
Sorry?
Just put the executable file.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna try. That's what I'm trying to show on there. Yeah. And so I'm gonna do that, right? So currently the flag is not there, right? So we need to look at a way of doing that. So we have a command called chmod, which is what's in your bullet number 26 there. And we'll see later on that we have a way of encoding all these parameters with numbers, okay? So we're going to learn later like an approach, right, that allows us to say something like 4755, and that, boom, changes everything, or 777s or something like that. But we can also have a more intuitive way of doing that, which is through letters like +X, okay? So I want to this is a quick way of flipping bits and making, you know, the flags, the respective flags, executable. You need to give it the name of the file. So I'm going to do hello. And remember that Linux is case sensitive. Hello world.py. Okay, so I ran the command chmod. Now I'm going to repeat and do ls-l. Okay, and you can see that a couple of things have happened. One is that the color has changed. That's an indicator of the operating system. Also, this has happened and then it is executable. All right, so now we can try to run it, but we'll see an issue. All right, so I run it and it tried to run, but it's missing something. It's missing a parameter that goes in scripts at the top where you have to tell them what the program is that it should use. So in this case, we have to tell it to use Python. All right, that's required for this to work. All right, so to do that, we need to go to the file. And up here, we need to do something like that. And I believe it will be in bin. It should be bin Python. So we'll need to find this as part of the assignment. We need to figure out the path where this program is located in the operating system. Does that make sense? But basically, what's important to understand here is that you're telling it, this is called a shebang, and you need to tell it where the program that runs this code is located. Okay? Any questions? All right, so I don't believe this is the right path. So if I run this, yeah, it's a bad interpreter. You see, it found something, but it's not the right one. So let me look this up in my repo. Or you guys can Google it. So at this point, go ahead and try to figure it out.
I think,
What is it? On the seed, do you know what it is?
yeah, so basically you're just looking for the path inside Python that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I think you just do which Python 3, that should point to where it is.
Which
Python 3.
Python 3?
Period.
Okay. So let me try that.
You can also do, like, the more portable way to do that would be user/bin/env space Python 3.
Yeah, it's the shebang.
Yeah, so like
All right, so let me type it in here because what was it?
it was yeah, so the shebang,
Mm-hmm.
and then you would do slash
Forward
user-
slash or backslash?
actually
/.
I guess it works both ways, I guess, but
Okay.
I don't think you use backslash, it's forward slash.
Forward slash, okay.
So user/bin,
User/bin
oh sorry, USR.
USR.
Yeah, I just call it user
/bin
/bin/env
env
Yeah, and then
Python
you space and then you do Python 3.
Python 3.
That'll automatically get the
Okay.
correct path for you.
All right, great. All right, so let's try it. Yeah. And if you have any questions about Linux, you can always ask Henry. Henry Olson. Write it down. All right, so yeah, great job, Henry. And so yeah, exactly. So that's the shebang for your scripts. And this is if you want to make them executable for whatever reason and you don't want to type the Python in front of it. Okay. So yeah, so this is an example of running scripts. And it kind of gives you this idea of when you have something like ls or pwd, they're basically just scripts that you're running in batch probably, in bash, but still. So yeah, so that's the lab. Okay, that's the demo. So work on it. Okay, you can start running through the commands, start creating the document. This is meant to be just the first class, the intro. If you have any questions or are stuck with anything, I'll be here to help you out. But yeah, I think we went over a lot of the bullets And then you just have a few problems that you need to address or look up on your own. And yeah, that's the first assignment. Are there any questions of what you need to do, how you complete it, how you approach it? Everything's pretty clear, right? All right, so that should be enough for you guys to have a homework assignment to submit for next Thursday. Okay, and then keep in mind on Tuesday, then we will, let me just go back to the table of contents here. On Tuesday, we will start the next module, which is basically, we're going to do way more scripting. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off here, and I'll give you a case, okay, some kind of a problem, and we need to solve. Okay. Yeah. All right, so I'll be here if you have any questions. I'll stop the recording right now, and then please try to work on your lab and submit it if you can.